Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going into, well, quite a complex figure online, Hunter Avallone.
Yeah, and our source material for this is a series of YouTube video transcripts. They're from the channel Actual Justice Warrior, or AJW.
Right, and they're pretty critical analyses of Avallone's content, his actions, all that stuff.
Exactly. So our goal here, just to be clear, is to unpack the controversies and events around Avallone as they're presented in these specific transcripts.
We're looking at the criticisms, his, shifting political views, some major personal events.
All based on these interpretations.
Okay.
We want to give you, the listener, a solid overview based just on what these sources say.
Okay, let's dive in then. One of the first big things that comes up in these transcripts is censorship.
Yeah, specifically AJW criticizing Avallone apparently for seeming to support Twitter kicking Donald Trump off after the January 6th Capitol riot.
And the transcript mentions Twitter's reasoning, right? Something about glorifying violence.
Yeah, that was their official line, linked to the riot and Trump's statements around it. Context matters there.
But AJW pushes back.
Right. AJW's point, as presented in the transcript, is that Trump's words were, well, maybe just typical political talk.
Kind of vague enough for supporters to interpret how they wanted. Plausible deniability.
That's the idea AJW puts forward. And interestingly, the transcript suggests Avallone kind of conceded that, yeah, maybe Trump's rhetoric could fit under Twitter's policy.
That opens up a whole can of worms about platform moderation, doesn't it?
Definitely. Okay, so moving from that, the transcripts really highlight a clash between AJW and Avallone over Black Lives Matter BLM and personal responsibility.
Oh, yeah, this seemed like a major point of disagreement.
It really did. AJW's core argument, according to the transcript, is that the BLM narrative often kind of glosses over the actions of the individuals involved in police incidents.
Like Michael Brown, Corrin Gaines. AJW argues their actions were the main cause.
That's the claim presented, yeah, that their actions directly led to the outcome.
And AJW goes on to say that Avallone and others described as lefties in the transcript deliberately avoid talking about this responsibility aspect.
That's the assertion. The transcript also brings up AJW's point about higher crime rates in some communities leading, statistically, to more police encounters.
And didn't AJW mention a debate where Avallone brought up redlining?
Yeah, apparently Avallone linked higher homicide rates in Black communities to redlining from, the 30s to the 60s.
And AJW just wasn't buying that connection.
No, the transcript says AJW dismissed it as illogical, basically saying the timeline doesn't make sense as a direct cause for current rates. It really shows the different ways people try to explain these complex issues.
AJW also makes a point about the focus on unarmed Black individuals killed by police.
Right, saying that number, maybe 19 to 25 a year, according to the transcript, while tragic, is framed as a distraction from the much larger number of Black on Black.
So a real difference in focus and what they see as the core problem.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of makes you think, when we talk about these really sensitive things, what should be the focus? How do these different V take shape how we see it all?
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. The transcripts apparently go deep into a critique of Avallone on minimum wage.
Oh yeah, AJW seems to have had a lot of issues with an Avallone video on that. It gets pretty detailed.
Like what specifically?
Well, first, the history. AJW claims Avallone got the timing wrong, saying minimum wage started after the Depression, when AJW says it was during the Great Depression.
Okay, a factual dispute there.
And more than that, AJW argues the intent, at least for some early related laws like the Davis-Bacon Act, was actually partly about pricing out Black workers in firms, especially in construction, not just, economic stability or worker protection like Avallone apparently suggested.
Wow, okay. That's a very different historical narrative.
It is.
Yeah.
And AJW throws in a statistic, too, saying the federal minimum wage today buys less than 50 years ago.
Right, we hear that a lot.
But interestingly, it's still higher than the original minimum wage from the 30s, adjusted for inflation. So it's kind of nuanced.
It sounds like AJW is really trying to pick apart Avallone's understanding. What about that chart? The transcript mentioned a chart.
Right, the EPI chart, Economic Policy Institute. AJW really goes after this one.
Why? What was the issue?
Well, according to AJW in the transcript, the comparison was misleading. It compared productivity growth for the entire private sector, including managers, execs, everyone.
Okay.
Against compensation growth for just typical non-supervisory workers. AJW says that's comparing apples and oranges, like comparing the whole company's output to just the frontline workers' pay increases.
I see. So the groups being compared weren't equivalent.
That's the argument. And then there's the inflation thing. This gets a bit technical.
Lay it on me.
AJW claims the chart used different inflation measures: IPD, implicit price deflator for the productivity side, and CPI consumer price index for the pay side.
And why does that matter?
Because they measure inflation slightly differently. AJW argues using two different rulers, so to speak, artificially widens the gap shown on the chart.
Okay, so manipulating the stats in AJW's view.
That's the implication.
Yeah.
AJW apparently showed alternative charts using the same inflation measure for both productivity and pay, and the gap looked much smaller.
Huh. What about the $15 minimum wage push?
Yeah, Avallone apparently claimed there's a vast consensus of economists supporting $15 an hour.
Which AJW disputes.
Strongly. AJW says even the EPI, the source of that chart, doesn't claim such a broad consensus for $15 specifically.
So questioning the level of support.
Right. And then AJW brings in CBO data, Congressional Budget Office. Avallone apparently highlighted CBO findings that a $10 minimum might help 3.5 million workers with little job loss.
Okay, sounds causative.
But AJW points out that the same CBO report projected that a $15 minimum, while lifting maybe 900,000 out of poverty, could cost 1.4 million jobs.
So Avallone maybe left out the downside for the higher figure.
That's what AJW suggests in the transcript, cherry-picking the data.
And the tipped wage.
Yeah, AJW criticizes Avallone for using data about small, like 10% minimum wage hikes, as if it applies to the much bigger change of eliminating the tipped and sub-minimum wage altogether.
Not a fair comparison, AJW thinks.
Right. And finally, there's a mention of Avallone suggesting an opt-out for worker co-op, which seems like a separate little policy idea.
Man, okay. So AJW's critique on minimum wage is really detailed history, data analysis, economic impact.
Yeah, the transcript paints a picture of AJW believing Avallone used weak or selective argument. For you listening, it really drives home how important it is to, really dig into the data and sources people use online.
Okay, wow. Now the tone shifts pretty dramatically, it sounds like, when the transcripts get to Avallone's comments about David Dorn.
Yeah, this section seems, based on the summary, particularly charged. AJW apparently reacted very strongly.
What were the comments attributed to Avallone?
The transcript quotes Avallone as seeming pretty dismissive, questioning Dorn's character, like saying maybe he wasn't an angel, speculating maybe he was on fentanyl.
Seriously? Fentanyl?
That's what's reported in the transcript. Apparently mocking his decision to protect the pawn shop during the riots, calling it kooky, really harsh stuff.
But AJW provides a counter-narrative from Dorn's wife.
Exactly. The transcript details her explanation. Dorn was longtime friends with the pawn shop owner, Lee. Dorn had helped Lee years ago after his family was attacked.
So there was
A deep one, according to the transcript. Checking on Lee's shop was something Dorn apparently did regularly out of friendship and this sense of responsibility. It paints a picture of duty, not foolish.
And AJW brings in some policing concept.
Yeah, noble cause corruption.
Yeah.
Though AJW clarifies Dorn's actions weren't corrupt, the idea is that a deep sense of duty, the smell of the victim's blood, as the transcript puts it, can drive officers, even retired ones, to act. It's presented as context for his motive.
So AJW sees Avallone's comments as deeply disrespectful.
Extremely. The transcript emphasizes AJW's outrage, especially given the horrible detail that Dorn's grandson might have seen his death unfold online. It's just, very heavy.
The transcripts also mention, just briefly, another AJW video accusing Avallone of lying for Biden.
Right. It's mentioned as another point of contention, another example of AJW strongly disagreeing with Avallone's analysis, but the transcript excerpt didn't go into the specifics on that one.
Okay, so shifting from these political and commentary disputes, there's a really frightening personal event covered, the attack.
Yeah, this is obviously incredibly serious. The attempted attack on Hunter Avallone and his girlfriend, Holly.
It sounds terrifying. What did the transcript say happened?
They describe Holly's ex-boyfriend showing up at their apartment, allegedly with a shotgun. He apparently wounded Holly.
Oh my God.
And tried to harm Avallone. The incident ended tragically with the ex-boyfriend taking his own life after the police arrived.
And there was something about stalking beforehand. AirTag.
Yeah, the transcript mentions Holly posting on social media about finding AirTags hidden in her stuff just 5 days before the attack. It strongly suggests stalking was happening.
How did AJW react to this news?
Notably, the transcript highlights AJW condemning anyone who might mock the situation because they disagree with Avallone politically. A line was drawn there.
Good. And news reports confirmed it.
Yes, a local news report apparently confirmed the events and the identity of the suspect, Conrad. It underscores this wasn't just online drama, it was terrifyingly real.
The transcript notes Avallone wasn't a gun owner.
Right, reportedly not at the time. And AJW apparently suggested, maybe rhetorically, that he might reconsider that.
Was there criticism of Avallone's actions during the attack?
Yeah, some criticism apparently surfaced about him not physically confronting the attacker. But AJW, according to the transcript, pushes back hard on that, saying it's unrealistic, Life is an action movie. Survival is the priority.
That makes sense.
The transcript adds more tragic details, too. Holly apparently had to see the deceased attacker when she was being taken to the hospital, and a GoFundMe for her medical bills is mentioned.
Yes.
And AJW raises a point about the system, questioning if a criminal justice system failed Holly by not acting sooner on the potential stalking situation. It really brings home the real-world dangers that can intersect with online life.
Okay. Moving back to the critiques of Avallone's content, the Breonna Taylor case debate seems to be a big focus in the scripts.
Yes, a very extensive critique apparently focused heavily on what AJW perceived as factual errors in Avallone's arguments during a debate.